My name is Sarah. I am 50 years old. And as I stood in the wreckage of my living room staring at the divorce papers my husband of 25 years had just served me, I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to sprint to the kitchen sink. The water was running cold against my wrists, but the room was spinning. Mark was standing in the doorway, his suitcase already packed and sitting by the front door, looking at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Sarah, please," he said, checking his watch. "Don't make this physical. I told you this isn't about you. It's about me finding out who I am before it's too late." I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, trembling not from the sickness, but from the sheer shock of it all. "You're leaving," I whispered, my voice raspy. "Our youngest just drove away to college 48 hours ago, Mark. The house isn't even quiet yet and you're leaving." "I have to," he said, picking up his keys. "I can't do the growing old together thing. I need vitality. I need a fresh start." The door clicked shut behind him, and the sound echoed like a gunshot in the empty hallway. I sank to the floor, the cold tile pressing against my legs, and I cried until my chest ached, convinced that this was the absolute bottom, that nothing could possibly be more terrifying than being 50, alone, and discarded. But I was wrong. Because 2 days later, when the nausea didn't stop, and a strange, heavy fatigue settled into my bones, I took a test I found buried in the back of the bathroom cabinet, thinking it would prove I was just stressed or going through menopause. I set it on the counter and waited 3 minutes. When I looked down, the room didn't just spin, it stopped. 2 pink lines. At 50 years old, with my marriage over and my children grown, I was pregnant. Please note that this story involves sensitive topics regarding high-risk pregnancy, relationship trauma, and emotional distress, so please take care of yourself while listening. If you have ever had your life completely upended in the span of a single heartbeat, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience. I sat on the edge of the bathtub for an hour, just staring at that little plastic stick. It had to be a mistake. It had to be a false positive caused by hormonal shifts, or maybe a cyst, or just a cruel prank the universe was playing on a woman who had already lost everything. We hadn't even been careful lately because, well, I was 50. My doctor had told me 2 years ago that my window had closed, that I was premenopausal and effectively done. Mark and I had a celebratory dinner a month ago, a rare night of intimacy where we drank too much wine and pretended we were young again, and I never gave it a second thought. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it, and dialed my doctor's office. "I need to come in," I told the receptionist, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's an emergency." "Is it pain, Sarah?" she asked. "No," I said, looking at the test again. "It's a miracle or a disaster." The drive to the clinic felt like a dream sequence, where everything was blurry and moving too fast. I sat in the paper gown, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights, waiting for Dr. Evans to come in and tell me I was crazy. She walked in with my chart, looking confused. "Sarah, the urine test came back positive," she said, pulling up her stool. "But given your age and history, I want to do an ultrasound immediately. It's likely a chemical pregnancy or a hormonal surge, but we need to rule out everything." I nodded, lying back on the table, closing my eyes as the cold gel hit my stomach. Silence filled the room. It went on for 10 seconds, then 20. I opened one eye. Dr. Evans was squinting at the screen, her brow furrowed. "What is it?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Is it a tumor?" She turned the monitor toward me. "No, Sarah," she said softly. "That is a heartbeat." I stared at the tiny, flickering pulse on the screen, a grayscale flutter that shouldn't have been there. "How?" I whispered. "It's rare," she said, her voice serious. "Extremely rare. Spontaneous ovulation can happen even in perimenopause, but Sarah, we need to talk about reality." I knew what was coming. "You are 50, she continued gently. "This is a geriatric pregnancy in the extreme. The risks for you, Preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, cardiac stress are sky high, and the risks for the baby regarding chromosomal abnormalities are significant. I touched the screen, a tear sliding down my temple. "It's a baby," I said. "It is," she agreed, "but you need to decide if you can physically and emotionally handle this, especially now." She knew about Mark. Everyone in our small town knew about Mark by now. "I don't know," I admitted. "I truly don't know." I left the office with a terrifying black and white photo tucked into my purse and a referral for a high-risk specialist. I drove home to the empty house, the silence pressing in on me like a physical weight. I walked into the kitchen and saw the divorce papers still sitting on the island where I had left them. I needed to tell him. He had a right to know, didn't he? I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. This time, it rang twice before he picked up. "Sarah," he said, his voice clipped and impatient. "I'm in a meeting. If this is about the house, speak to my lawyer." "It's not about the house," I said, gripping the counter. "Mark, I went to the doctor today." "I don't have time for your health drama right now," he snapped. "You're stressed. Take a Xanax." "I can't take a Xanax," I said, my voice rising, "because I'm pregnant." There was a silence on the other end of the line, so profound, I thought the call had dropped. Then, a low, cold laugh. "Wow," he said. "That is desperate, Sarah, even for you." "I'm serious," I said, tears springing to my eyes. "I have an ultrasound picture. It's from the night of our anniversary." "You're 50 years old," he shouted. "It's biologically impossible. And even if you somehow manage to get pregnant, which I doubt, don't think for a second you're pinning this on me to stop the divorce. I'm done." "Mark, look at the date," I pleaded. "Just come over and look at the—" "I'm blocking this number," he said. "Do not contact me again unless it's through legal counsel." The line went dead. I stood there, holding the phone, listening to the dial tone, realizing that the man I had spent half my life with wasn't just leaving me. He was erasing me. And just then, a sharp, cramping pain shot through my lower abdomen. I gasped, dropping the phone and clutching my stomach. I doubled over, terrified that the stress had already done its damage, that this miracle was ending before it had even begun. I dragged myself to the sofa and curled into a ball, waiting for the bleeding to start, waiting for the end. But it didn't come. The cramping subsided into a dull ache, a reminder that my body was fighting a battle it wasn't designed to win. The next few weeks were a blur of loneliness and fear. I decided to keep the pregnancy a secret. How could I tell my friends, who were all planning retirement trips and empty nest makeovers, that I was starting over with diapers and sleepless nights? How could I tell my adult children, who were just starting their own lives, that their mother was having a baby? I felt like a freak. I wore baggy sweaters and avoided town, ordering my groceries online. Every appointment with the specialist was a new hurdle. "Blood pressure is creeping up," the specialist, Dr. Thorne, said at 12 weeks. "We need to monitor this closely, Sarah. Your kidneys are working overtime." "Is the baby okay?" I asked, watching the screen. "Baby looks strong," he said. "Surprisingly strong, but we're waiting on the genetic testing results. At your age, the odds of Down syndrome or other trisomies are about 1 in 10. 1 in 10. I spent the next week staring at the ceiling at night, bargaining with God. "Just let him be healthy. I'll do it alone. I'll be the grandma mom at the playground. I don't care, just let him be okay." Then the envelope arrived. I sat at my kitchen table, my hands trembling as I tore it open. Low risk. I let out a sob that sounded more like a scream. Low risk for everything, and it was a boy. A son. I had 2 daughters. Mark had always wanted a son, but we stopped after the girls because money was tight back then. Now he was getting a son, and he didn't even believe he existed. I knew I couldn't hide it forever. At 16 weeks, I was showing. There was no hiding the bump. My body remembered what to do, and things were expanding faster than they had in my 20s. I decided to tell my daughters first. I set up a video call. Jessica was in her dorm room, and Emily was in her apartment in Chicago. "Mom, you look tired," Emily said, squinting at the screen. "Are you eating? Have you heard from Dad?" "I have news," I said, pulling the ultrasound photo into the frame. They both went silent. "Is that grandbabies?" Jessica asked, her eyes wide. "Wait, is Emily pregnant?" "No," I said, taking a deep breath. "I am." The silence this time was different. It was horrified. "Mom," Emily said slowly, "you're 50, that's dangerous. Is it Dad's?" "Yes," I said. "He doesn't believe me. He thinks I'm lying." "Oh my God," Jessica whispered. "This is a mess. Mom, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to have him," I said, feeling a surge of protectiveness I hadn't expected. "I'm going to be a mother again." They were worried, I could tell. They were embarrassed, too. But they didn't reject me. "We'll come home," Emily said. "For the birth, we'll be there." That little bit of support was the fuel I needed. But the world outside my family wasn't as kind. I ran into an old neighbor, Linda, at the pharmacy while picking up prenatal vitamins. She looked at my stomach, then at my face, her eyes bulging. "Sarah," she asked, "you're putting on weight." "I'm pregnant, Linda," I said, lifting my chin. "Oh," she said, taking a step back. "Oh my, does Mark know?" "Mark is gone," I said. "I heard," she lowered her voice. "I saw him, actually, at the Italian place downtown, with that girl from the gym, the one who teaches Zumba." My stomach dropped. The girl from the gym was 28. She was younger than my oldest daughter. "She looked very fit," Linda added helpfully. I walked out of the pharmacy without my vitamins, my face burning. So that was the vitality he needed. He traded me in for a model who could barely rent a car while I was carrying his son. The anger I felt in that moment was purifying. It burned away the sadness. I went home and started turning the guest room, Mark's old man cave, into a nursery. I painted over the dark gray walls with a soft, sunny yellow. I sold his leather recliner online and bought a crib. Every stroke of the paintbrush felt like reclaiming my life. But at 24 weeks, things took a turn. I woke up with a headache that felt like an ice pick behind my eyes. My vision was blurry. I checked my blood pressure on the home cuff I'd bought. 180 over 110. I knew enough to know that was stroke territory. I called 911. The ambulance ride was terrifying. "We're losing the fetal heart rate intermittently," the paramedic shouted to the driver. "Step on it." I was strapped to a gurney, sirens wailing, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. "Don't take him. Take me, but don't take him." In the ER, they stabilized me, but Dr. Thorne was grim. "Severe preeclampsia," he said. "Sarah, your liver enzymes are shooting up. We need to keep you here. Bed rest until delivery. If we can get to 34 weeks, it's a win. If not, we have to deliver to save you." I was admitted to the antenatal ward. I spent my days staring at the monitor, listening to the whoosh-whoosh of my son's heart. I was lonely. My daughters visited when they could, but they had school and jobs. I was alone in a hospital room, facing the fight of my life. And then Mark showed up. I was sleeping, or dozing, when I heard the door click. I opened my eyes and saw him standing at the foot of the bed. He looked tan, rested. "They told me you were here," he said stiffly. "Linda told me." "What do you want, Mark?" I asked, struggling to sit up. "I brought the divorce papers," he said, placing a manila envelope on the tray table. "My lawyer said since you're incapacitated, we needed to deliver them in person. I need you to sign." I stared at him. I was hooked up to IVs, my face swollen from edema, fighting to keep his child alive, and he was here to get a signature. "You see this?" I pointed to my stomach. He didn't look. He refused to look. "I see a high-risk medical situation that you chose to put yourself in," he said coldly. I'm not paying child support for a midlife crisis, Sarah. My lawyer is requesting a paternity test the moment that thing is born. That thing, I said, my voice shaking, is your son. We'll see, he said. Sign the papers. Get out, I whispered. Sarah. Get out, I screamed, grabbing the plastic water pitcher and hurling it at him. It missed, hitting the wall with a loud crack, water splashing everywhere. Nurses rushed in. Sir, you need to leave, a nurse commanded, stepping between us. She's hysterical, Mark said, adjusting his jacket. I'm leaving, just make sure she signs. He walked out. My blood pressure monitor started beeping frantically. Breathe, Sarah, breathe, the nurse said, holding my hand. But I couldn't breathe. The pain in my head exploded. Then the darkness took me. I woke up to bright lights and shouting. She's seizing. Get her to the OR now. I was moving. The ceiling tiles were rushing past. I couldn't feel my body. I tried to ask about the baby, but I had a tube in my throat. I saw Dr. Thorne's eyes above his mask. They looked terrified. This is it, I thought. I'm dying. The last thing I remember was the cold bite of anesthesia and the thought of my yellow nursery, empty and waiting. Sarah. The voice was far away. Sarah, can you squeeze my hand? I blinked. My eyelids felt like sandpaper. I was in a different room, the ICU. I tried to sit up, but pain ripped through my midsection. Easy, easy, a nurse said. The baby, I rasped. The tube was gone. Where is he? The nurse smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. He's in the NICU, she said. He's small, 3 pounds, 4 ounces, but he's a fighter just like his mom. I began to cry. He's alive. He's very much alive, she said. It took 2 days before I was stable enough to see him. They wheeled me into the dim, quiet room filled with incubators. And there he was. Leo. I named him Leo because he had to be strong as a lion. He was tiny, covered in wires, his skin translucent. But when I put my hand through the incubator hole, his tiny fingers curled around my pinky. And in that moment, the divorce, the loneliness, the fear, it all evaporated. I was a mother, again. I stayed in the hospital for another week. Leo stayed for 6. I signed the divorce papers while sitting in the NICU waiting room. I didn't even read them. I just wanted Mark out of my life. I went home to the yellow nursery and waited for my son to come home. My daughters came and stayed, helping me set up, bringing a new energy into the house. We were a house of women, waiting for our little prince. When Leo finally came home, he weighed 5 pounds. He was perfect, and he looked exactly like Mark. It was undeniable, the same nose, the same chin. I knew the reckoning was coming. A week later, on a Tuesday afternoon, a car pulled into the driveway. It was Mark. I watched him from the window. He walked up the path slowly. I opened the door, holding Leo in my arms. Mark stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. He looked tired. The tan had faded. I got the results, he said, holding up a letter. From the DNA test your lawyer facilitated. I know, I said. He's mine, Mark said, his voice quiet. Biologically, I corrected. He looked up at me, and then his eyes drifted to the bundle in my arms. Leo shifted and let out a small sigh. Mark's face crumpled. Sarah, he said, taking a step forward. Can I see him? No, I said. Mark froze. What? He's my son. You called him a thing, I said calmly. You told me I was pathetic. You left me to die in that hospital room, Mark. You don't get to be a father just because the hard part is over. I made a mistake, he said, his voice cracking. Tiffany, she left. She didn't want a man with baggage. I realized I threw away my family. You did, I said. Please, he begged. I want to fix this. We can try again for him. I looked down at Leo. He was sleeping peacefully, safe and loved. I looked back at Mark, a man chasing his youth, a man who crumbled when things got hard. I didn't need him. That was the biggest shock of all. I had been so afraid of being alone. I hadn't realized that I was stronger on my own. You can contact my lawyer regarding visitation rights, I said. But you are not coming into this house. This is our home, not yours. Sarah, please, he said, tears running down his face. I'm 52. I don't want to be alone. Neither did I said, but I figured it out. I stepped back and closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I walked back into the living room, where the sunlight was streaming in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I sat in the rocking chair and looked at my son. People tell me I'm crazy for starting over at 50. They tell me I'll be 70 when he graduates college. They tell me I should have just enjoyed my freedom. But looking at his little face, I realized that freedom isn't about having zero responsibilities. Freedom is knowing that no matter what life throws at you, divorce, age, fear, you can survive it. I lost a husband who didn't love me, and I gained a son who is my entire world. I'd say that's a pretty good trade. Life rarely goes according to plan, but sometimes the detour is where you find the view that takes your breath away. If you have ever had to rebuild your life when you thought it was over, tell me your story in the comments. What was the one thing that gave you the strength to keep going?